Hey, it's Jeremy from jeremy.net. I am a comic book artist, writer, creator, self-publisher, and I share my creative process here with you online. If you'd like to get additional bonus live streams twice a month, you can become a Patreon subscriber at patreon.com/Jeremy. That's patreon.com/GERIMI. We also have an online archive where you can read my comic books digitally, as well as a Patreon exclusive Discord server where we share feedback, process, tips, art tools, and more. So head on over to patreon.com/Jeremy and sign up. $2 a month gets you in. If you'd like to see what I'm working on, when I'm not live streaming, individual blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me creatively, work in progress, animated GIFs, you can sign up for my free monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. You'll also get a free digital sketchbook. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comic books, or if you read digitally on Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. That forwards you to my Amazon author page. You can pick up my books, check those out. And if you go to the homepage of my YouTube channel, there are also book flip-through videos. You can check them out, see what's inside before you pick them up. Okay, so on that note, let me see here. I see my buddy Dan Plagle is in the chat. How you doing, Dan? Good to see you. Hope you are doing well and being well. This is so weird. Everything that seems to be running is working, but it's working a little bit slowly. I don't know. Well, if there's any glitches, you guys let me know. For the most part, I will try to keep things running smoothly here. It could also be that the computer is acting adversely to my change in setup, because something we haven't done in a hot minute is fixing some bad figure drawing. So last night I was going over some of my work from my current figure drawing class. I am taking a class with Carl Ganas at figuredrawingschool.com. I've been studying with him for many years at the Animation Guild, and now he's taken his courses online. He currently has a class on heads, hands, and feet. And the cool thing about his virtual classes is that even though you're not working in person, he makes video recordings available for a certain number of days after each class. You can always go back and re-look at them, re-watch them, redraw things. And that is incredibly invaluable. But I will also tell you, the thing that I find helps me the most as an artist is going over my drawings from class and redrawing them, just trying to fix whatever's wrong. Looking at it and really analyzing and asking, well, why did this work and this not work? Why are these proportions off? Why does it express volume or shape or the character of the model? What have you? And so I was working on some of these last night. And I thought, I haven't done a fixing bad figure drawings video in a while, and maybe I should. So this drawing right here is a drawing where I am redrawing this drawing, which feels a little bit too bulky. And, it also doesn't really it has a sense of volume and structure, but doesn't really capture the character of the model's face. And this drawing is me redrawing. If I slide this over, this one over here, which this was a 5-minute pose in class. I really didn't get chance to do much other than blocking in the very basics of the shape of the skull and then basically working on her face. And even that, I don't feel like the face really captured the model's character. So it's almost like this is what I did in class. This is me trying to finish the drawing, but realizing it doesn't look anything like the model. And then this is me going back and saying, what is my memory of what the model actually looked like, and trying to fix that. And the goal in my mind is to get to this faster. Almost like I want to skip over this middle part, which is just me working in terms of structure and volume and trying to make something feel solid. So I'm trying to merge my observational abilities with my memory and my sense of emotion, whatever it is I'm connecting with the model when I'm drawing them. So, by the way, if you guys are just seeing a black square on this, let me know in the chat, because it's super weird. For some reason, I can see my head and I can see the little box of me speaking, but the drawing on my screen just shows up. Like, it looks like I have a window open that is showing my my drawing table, but from my view on the actual display, there's just a black box in the streaming box. So Dan says looks great. All right, awesome. Thank you. That's all I needed to know. So let me move this over here. Ideally, I would actually move this a little bit closer, the camera a little bit closer, so you guys could really see every stroke and every mark. But it will also make it more difficult for me to scoot around and show you different aspects of the drawing board, because most of what I'm drawing over here is somehow referenced over on this other page. Like, for instance, this drawing right here, kind of blocked in and rough, is what I'm actually correcting now. And I have to decide, do I want to draw close enough that you guys can actually see what I'm doing over here, or do I want to draw wide enough you guys can see both drawings? But I think you probably get more out of seeing the close-up of the drawing I'm making versus the drawing, being able to see both the drawing I'm making and the drawing that I'm correcting at the same time. So just a choice that I'm going with. And doesn't mean we can't change camera angles. It would be nice, actually, if I had like a 2-camera setup, that I had one camera that showed the whole board and then one camera that was a close-up or a detail shot. But as it stands now, we don't have the budget for multicam. I would love to do that. So if anybody wants to get in those super chats and raise funds for making this a multi-camera live stream, I'm here for it. But as it stands, this drawing that I'm working on now, I'm kind of just getting to the last bits of it, just blocking in really the hair. And when I'm saying blocking in the hair, it's really like I'm just trying to indicate which side is the shadow side, and then which area has light hitting it. And I feel like there should be a little window of light between her ponytail and her neck and the back of her hair. And the trick here is to describe volume, but to do it softly. Because I think as a comic book artist, our instinct is to make very definitive marks, to spot blacks. Whereas drawing with charcoal is a lot more of a painterly process. True, it's charcoal pencil, so it's not like I'm drawing with a big brick or a piece of charcoal, which might be unwieldy. And something to keep in mind, the only reason why a big brick of charcoal or a piece of charcoal feels so unwieldy is because of the size that you might be working. Like, I have never really spent a lot of time doing single drawings. Like, even this drawing that you can see here, you can see that my hand is much bigger than the actual drawing. The drawing is it's less than the size of the palm of my hand. So this is a fairly small drawing. realistically, if I were working on a full illustration using just a separate standalone piece of charcoal, I probably would be drawing a piece of charcoal that's the size of this entire sheet that I'm working on, which is about, I think, 12 by 18. Yes, it's half of an 18 by 24 sheet, so 12 by 18. I mean, realistically, I should probably be working, if I'm going to work with a piece of charcoal, I should probably just be doing a full 18 by 24 piece. And then charcoal doesn't become this big thing that you're making tiny marks with. It becomes, like just a paintbrush, really. It's appropriate to the size that you're working on, and you can use it with the tip to get detail and the corners, whereas you can use the side of the charcoal to get large sweeping areas of tone. All right, I think that I'm about done with this. Now, one of the things that I'm doing is in the same way that I went ahead and redrew a drawing from there twice. I drew this one and it wasn't working, and then drew another one. This piece, this drawing right here, has an angle that I like, and it has structure in the sense that you get the sense of planes, but her face feels too blocky. Like her face is actually softer, more angled. Like this drawing and the drawing below are the same model. All of these pages are the same model, and this really does not feel like the same person. This probably looks the closest to how the model looks, this bottom right drawing. So this is a redrawing of this drawing. And I kind of want to go through, I'm going to move to a new sheet, and I'm going to take another stab at this one. And this is my process. People say all the time, one of the biggest questions people have is, how do I get better? And the way you get better is by analyzing the things you do wrong. I could just do a redraw one time and be like, oh, well, I guess I didn't get it, and then move on to another one. But looking at this and saying, all right, are the features in the right proportions? Did I put too much shadow in there? And does it need less shadow? So trying to pick the best spots to define your lights and your darks. Looking at what I did wrong with this drawing and trying to take another stab at corrections so this time it's like, the first drawing was trying to correct this one. Now with the next drawing I'm trying to correct two drawings. I'm trying to correct this drawing and that drawing. I've tried one approach and it didn't work. It's a solid drawing. It's not a horrible drawing, but it doesn't accomplish the balance of capturing a likeness, which isn't really the main part. The main part is to make the figure feel solid. It does make the figure feel solid, but the features aren't properly in proportion, and it doesn't have the sense of expression and character that the model has. So I'm going to come back and take another stab, and I will tell you that is a downside here. Is realistically, I should be, when I'm making these corrections or taking this second stab at it, I should be looking at both of these drawings while doing the third drawing. But I've filled up this sheet of paper. I need to move on to a new sheet. And now let's take another stab at it. And this time I can scoot this a little bit more centered so that you can kind of see this one while I'm working. Let me see here. In fact, you're not going to be able to see it because I'm going to scoot this down a little bit further so I can kind of use all of the paper, because I like to sort of work my way down and do a drawing here and then do another drawing underneath, another drawing underneath, and then go to the right and go down, keep working my way down. Hang on. I'm going to put a little mark up here just for me so I know not to draw above that line. So this drawing is more than a 3/4. She's turned away a little bit more than 3/4, so I'm going to make the side of the head a little bit past center. So right now, it really is just a matter of, before even getting into the details, trying to block out the skull itself. And I try to remember, even at this stage, like, I'm trying to go back and forth between making a skull that respects the three-dimensionality of the figure. That little diagram I drew up there. So a shadow side, a side that's turning away from the light, and a side that's facing towards the light. So I'm trying to both capture the very simple spherical nature of the skull as a volume, while at the same time I'm trying to adjust that basic volume so that it captures the silhouette. As opposed to drawing very flat and two-dimensionally, I'm trying to merge the two-dimensional and the three-dimensional before I add any features. Before I add any features, I'm trying to do this. Because I find that the mistake I often make, and I make many, many mistakes, but the biggest one is that I will be so focused on trying to capture a solid figure and make it feel three-dimensional that I'll get what I got with the drawing that I showed you before of this that I'm correcting now, where it feels solid, it feels three-dimensional, but it doesn't look anything like the model. So the trick I have found is I need to go back and forth. I need to be intentional in trying to create volume, but then starting with the silhouette and just trying to make the silhouette match the volume. And that requires a little bit of push and pull and push and pull. And I have to keep reminding myself to draw lightly because it's too easy for me to get in here and start making darker, like even this defining the bridge of the nose, going too dark too soon. And I think I'm straightening the face out a bit too much. And by straightening this out, I mean that I'm making the facial plane broader so that we're looking at more of the front of the face when really this is at a sharper angle and their eyes are turned towards us, but the face itself, the actual plane, is angled away more. Drew a tiny little diagram there. Don't know how well you can see it, but I'm going to bring this closer. So the one on the left is what I'm doing, and the one on the right is what I should be doing. And these are the kind of things that redrawing something makes me more aware of mistakes that I make. But a lot of times we just draw and draw and draw, and then we get done and we're not happy with the drawing and we yell at ourselves and say, oh, I suck, I'm no good. It's not a matter of sucking. It is just a matter of when do you turn on that critical eye? Because if you turn it on too soon, you will always be paralyzed because you can't make any marks down. Every time you make a mark, you'll be like, oh, that's wrong. Because a lot of it will be wrong. But if you can kind of toggle it on and off, that's the real trick, I think, is toggling your inner critic. So drawing something and then looking at it with kind of a dry, unemotional eye and simply say, all right, this is wrong. This is why it's wrong. And more importantly, this is what it should be. And if you can do that multiple times throughout the process, throughout the drawing process, then you can come back to it, make these little corrections as you go. And even this is really, really hard for me because I'm trying to get the sense of the face looking upward or angled upward along with that sense of looking away. In fact, I think I need to push this facial plane more. I was making it just a little bit over 3/4. And honestly, I think in order to capture this, I need to push more towards a profile. That means the ear is going to be more prominent. If anything, I need to draw this like it's a profile and I'm pushing just a little bit just a tiny bit towards the viewer. This needs to be more profile than it is 3/4. Mostly profile. Scoop this down a little bit. Let's see what happens if I bring this down a tiny bit more. Because what's weird is that as I'm drawing, I kind of have to look around the camera. And the part that made this particularly hard is getting the right amount of the arch of the eyebrow as the head turns away. And again, I'm making this face a little bit more angular than it probably should be. Yeah, it's this is the place right here that is a lot of drawing and erasing, drawing and erasing. And what I am trying to do is position the volumes so that they fit the features of the model. Now, right here, I put in what felt like a nice structure for the start of the upper lip, but I realized it's too high. The space between her upper lip and her nose is not as high as it should be. And the other thing that I find challenging is that with this curve, maybe I'm curving her mouth too much because it's almost like I'm giving her a dour expression. Like I'm curving her mouth down because I'm looking up at it. But, you know, her actual expression is somewhat more playful. So maybe it's a matter of making it feel like it's wrapping around, but not letting that curve get too accentuated. Or maybe it's a matter of start by just blocking in upper lip and lower lip. That might help. Trying to treat the whole thing as a mass and trying to fix the mass before I get in there and get too specific about the details. I will tell you that this process of trying to analyze and correct the drawings that I do in figure drawing class is bar none the biggest tool that has helped me grow as an artist. Like, to me, it's sort of the artistic equivalent of just weight training in the gym. It's not fun. It's not sexy. Most times it is very, very tedious, but it builds the creative muscle. Or rather, I should say, it builds the, I don't want to say observational muscle, because it's not observational muscle. It builds the analytical muscle. That is what I'm learning to do, is how to analyze my work. Because having someone else look at your work and give you corrections is very helpful. It can be invaluable. But until you are able to look at your own work and on your own say, this is specifically good or bad. Let's see here. Trying to figure out how to hide. That is so weird. It doesn't give me the options that it does in other chats to just. That is so odd. YouTube gives you tools to moderate or hide certain comments or put people in a timeout. Twitch does not, or at least it doesn't through this interface. Always spam somewhere. Anyway, being able to look at your work and specifically say, this is the wrong shape, it's the wrong volume, it's lit from the wrong direction, the anatomy doesn't correspond with the features or the angle that I'm drawing. So it's not just a matter of, oh, my drawing's bad. The tool of being able to identify the specific thing that isn't working is invaluable, because something is bad is just criticizing. Specifically, this is what is wrong is something that is a tool that you can use to fix the problem. And I think that's the big thing. People want to spend time being upset about their drawings not being good instead of really saying, what can I do to fix this? Learning how to fix your work, to see the problems yourself, is one of the most important tools you can have. It's one of the most important tools you can develop as a creative person. You got to push this mouth, the lip, the dip of the Cupid's bow right to the edge. And I might have made her lips probably thicker than they really should be. Or at least her upper lip. Let's see here. And again, this is something that a trap I tend to fall into when I'm actually in class, where I get so ingrained in working on the features that I don't go back and work on the whole, because I should be developing this whole drawing evenly, meaning that the same level of refinement that I'm bringing to the face, I should be bringing to the back of the head, adding the ear, the hairline. In theory, should be developing a drawing equally, like as if you were a photographer, not a modern day photographer, but an old school photographer that had to develop their film. You know, it's not like you dip one corner of a photograph into the development fluid and then dip the other corner, and then you develop it bit by bit. You put the whole thing in this tank of development fluid and swish it around, and the whole picture kind of comes into view. And I think that we get better results if we move around and not focus too much on one part of a drawing. So I'm trying to actively make myself move away from working on the face for a bit, even though the face still has a lot more work. Well, I haven't really done the eyes yet. That's the really the work that it needs. But I haven't done that work yet. But I need to go in here and work around the rest of the skull. Give the back of the skull a little bit more volume. I'm drawing in the ponytail before I'm drawing the ear, because I want to just see what happens if I organically let the ear that ear is way too large. Even the hair, I'm trying to treat it as an overall mass, and then I'll come back in and put in divisions for actual chunks of hair. I'm starting almost like I'm just drawing a brick, or rather a piece of putty. It's kind of stuck on the side of the head. Then another piece of putty and another piece of putty. Then making divots in the putty. And another challenge here is looking at the underside, but the light, as I recall, the light from this drawing was coming from above right. So I want to capture a sense of the underside of the forms without putting too much shadow. I think that was the problem that I had before, is I started getting really shadowy. And it's a matter of how do I put just enough tone in there to express the direction the light's coming from without putting too much in and destroying the delicacy of the features. Not easy. And something that I've been playing with, and I don't think that this drawing is necessarily the best example of it, but I've been trying to work more where I'm using line as an accent and then using as much tone to actually construct the drawing as possible. And I don't know if any of you have watched James Gurney's YouTube channel, but painter, illustrator James Gurney talks a lot about when building a painting to start with as large a brush as possible. Don't get bogged down in the details, and only switch to a smaller brush when you can't possibly express what you're trying to express with the large brush anymore. Like even if you can, turning a brush on a corner. Let me see if I got any brushes laying around here. Turning a brush on a corner, so that as opposed to using the front flat, you're just using like a tiny corner to make lines and marks. Even trying to do that for as long as possible before switching to a round brush or a script brush, something that's a little bit smaller and pointier. And as of recently, like literally only the past week or two, I have been trying to apply that to my figure drawing work, which obviously I just put a line in there, so I'm completely defying what I was trying to express. But trying what I am ideally going for is building as much of the drawing as possible with tones, and then using line as an accent, as a way to draw attention to things, or just anything that needs a little bit further definition, we'll get it. But if I can define it without line, then I will attempt to do so. And ears are always tricky because on one hand, there's that theory that I just laid out about working in tone. On the other hand, sometimes ears are better if you just describe it with light lines and then put the whole thing in shadow. It's supposed to really drawing attention to the individual parts. Because that approach I just took, I literally looked at it, I'm like, this does not look like what I wanted in my mind's eye. In my mind's eye, I wanted something that was clearly defined, but slightly knocked back in tone, because the light is coming from this side. So The ear isn't like in a dark shadow, but it is turned away from the light. The ear is in halftone. And that was another thing I realized when I did the first corrective drawing, the first attempt at trying to correct this. I went too dark with my shadows, when really, in the context of this drawing, the shadow side still is mostly halftone. It's not like they were dark, deep, heavy sculptural shadows, or like as a comic book artist, it's not like they were spotted blacks. It wasn't like Frank Miller's Sin City. It was a lot more painterly. Think Alex Ross instead of Frank Miller. There was a lot of light and color in those shadows. And the only real shadows were really either occlusion shadows, like something like the crevice inside of the ear. And that's another thing. Even if this is sort of the darkest area, like inside of the ear, on a side that's facing away from the light, the way this is lit, this should be one of the darkest areas in the piece. But remember, black draws the eye. Line draws the eye. So even though it is darker, I want to downplay it because drawing attention to it is not the point. In the case of drawing an ear, you don't want the ear to stand out. I mean, the only time you're ever drawing a piece where you want the ear to stand out is if you're doing a diagram of the ear and you want to show people the structure of the ear. On that, ears aren't supposed to stand out. Ears are like a soundtrack. They're supposed to be there, but ears are like a soundtrack. You only notice it when it's missing. Think of it that way. So I don't want to draw attention to them. I would much rather draw attention to the hair by putting in these individual marks that follow the direction of the major mass. That to me feels like a better use of dark lines than it does of making the ear the actual value it would be. Now at this point, I want to be really light about the rest of the things I put in, because most of the detail that's going to be finishing this piece is going to be adjusting, adding shadow to the lips and the nostrils, and then the eye. The eye is, as with most pieces, the eye is usually the most detailed thing because the eyes are, as they say, the window to the soul. It's what we pay the most attention to. That doesn't mean there's going to be a lot of marks in the eye, but it means that's where the most of contrast is going to be, the most light and dark. So it's where the most attention is going to be, which is not the same as the most marks. And that's a good way to think of it. Attention is not a bunch of lines. Attention isn't detail. Attention is contrast between light and dark. That draws your focus up. Like this is the number one that draws focus. And then number two is detail. Detail does draw focus, but it's indistinct. You know, sometimes a lot of detail, like for instance, this, you could say that these lines in the hair, that's detail, but a bunch of detail becomes almost like a pattern unto itself. It becomes a mass versus contrast. Contrast, when I come in here and I make the eyelids and the eyelashes dark and the eyebrows dark, and then really get in there and try to separate the eyelid from that underside of the zygomatic arch where the brow comes in there, that shape of the eyebrows and the skull. When I separate those two, you know, that's contrast. It's focus, which is not the same as putting detail in. So maybe I want to add a little bit more tone on the underside. of her jaw. And then a little bit of tone to get the shadow dropping down. But I still want to keep this soft because her jaw was not like angular in that sense that there would be a hard line here. This area where her jaw connects to her ear was soft. It was subtle. So I want to, and this is where that painterly idea of edges becomes important, because it's a plane change. It's a distinct plane change, but it is a soft plane change. And that's the difference between doing a hard edged something turns versus a gradual turn or doing a soft turn. And I think one of the hardest things to do is a turn that is harder than just a sphere or a ball shape, but softer than, say, I don't know, the tone of a finger changing direction, the tone of something sharply turning from one form to another, like the lips. You know, that's a very sharp tone, or a change of plane between the upper lip and the actual lip. And adding just enough tone in here. You know, when I'm done with this, I'm gonna go back to the one that I didn't like, and I'm just gonna go in and like smudge all of the hard edges, because I really, now that I'm looking at this, I'm thinking I can see places where the proportions were off, but the thing that ruined that drawing the most for me, I think, was just all of my shadows, or so much of the edges were hard edges as opposed to soft. And this is me doing an exercise in attempting to keep my edges as soft as possible. And even this down here, as I'm kind of trying to describe the neck fitting into the collarbone, I am probably getting too dark with the shadows, trying too hard, too heavy-handed. I got to turn the volume down on it. I probably need to bring her shoulder up more, because now it looks weird, like her neck, as long as her, and she did have a very long, graceful neck, but her shoulder needs to be farther up. Otherwise, it's just kind of an alien neck. Ease that in there. Soften that a little bit. Collarbone on the other side. Soften that. And I'm trying to describe the anatomy of the neck, but softly, which is hard. I know that's an oxymoron. It is difficult to softly describe the anatomy of the neck. It's easier on a man because men, we tend to, we get, expressive. Our necks bulge. We tense our necks more. And the trick is to make it's almost like you want to just know that the neck anatomy is there. You don't want to draw it. You just want to give a sense that, it's there. Those muscles are there, but they're just not bulging the way that they might in a male figure. It's got to be soft. All right. So at this point, any more detail will draw attention away from the eyes, which I haven't even started yet. So I'm going to frame the eyes a little bit by just putting a little bit of tone under there. And something I've been trying to do also is really think of that sphere of the eye. Not just think of it as a sphere, but respect its spherical nature in the sense that I treat this like, let's say that this entire region here is spherical. There's going to be shadow on the left side of the whole region. So I'm trying to shade the whole eye socket from left to right like a sphere from left to right. Now, in this case, we're viewing it from the underside, so it's resting. Part of that sphere is under the surface, like an iceberg. And part of the top has the area above the eyelid wrapped around it. But still, this region, all of it is spherical. So for all of it, I'm trying to slightly soften the tone in that way. And then once I get that, then I go in and I'm adding the details of the upper lid going around that sphere and coming down. So a lot of this is simply taking two-dimensional shapes and saying, all right, if I want it to feel three-dimensional, what are the volumes? What part of this shape is facing away from the light? What part of this shape is facing towards the light? What part of this shape has a plane change? Which part of this shape is sitting in front of the shape that's next to it? What part is tucking behind the shape that's next to it? It is taking the two-dimensional and asking what are the three-dimensional relationships. To me, that is the big goal in working out your drawings. So now I'm just going to draw that, but much smaller. So I'm really going to have to use line anyway, because like I said, much as with the other drawing, look at how big this is. This drawing is smaller than the palm of my hand. And if I were working bigger, then I could move the camera further back. But this drawing would also take me longer because I'm covering a certain amount of space. And let me give you a sense of comparison, because I have kind of big hands. So here's my phone. That's how big the drawing is. It is not as tall as my phone. So, or actually the whole entire thing, if you compare it, maybe it's as tall as my phone. But I mean, this is a fairly small drawing for something like charcoal pencil. The drawing that I drew in class of this model is probably about 10% larger than this, because I tried to work larger. When I'm doing these when I'm doing these corrective drawings, I draw smaller because I'm also trying to think of the whole and fix mistakes. And sometimes just having something slightly smaller gives the visual effect of stepping back from the drawing. But that said, generally speaking, I don't recommend drawing smaller. I would probably learn more if I were drawing this really, really large, because large drawings, they make your mistakes stand out more, but they also force you to really, they leave you room for making more corrections because there's more space, but they also force you to be more observant of space because you're closer now. Giving her a little bit of a Mona Lisa smile there, kind of subtle, slight curving up more. But yeah, I try to jump back and forth between all of the things I'm trying to indicate here. So jumping back and forth between the nose, the mouth, and the eye now. Although the eye, I think that part of the reason why I tend to leave the eye for last and the least developed is because you can spend your entire time just drawing and fixing an eye, and there's so much that goes wrong with it or can go wrong. And I'm thinking about that corrective process. Basically, if I draw the rest of the head and then the eyes are wrong, I can sit here and work forever on the eyes. But if I draw the eyes, I get the eyes right, and then the rest of the head is wrong, it'll drive me nuts because there's so many other things that need to be wrong. And it could be, oh, I just need to change the relationship between the eyes and the head. I'll spend the whole drawing trying to fix the rest of the head to make it match the eyes. And it is a lot easier to make the eyes match the head than to get us to the perfect eyes, and then you're making the head trying to match the eyes. It's a lot harder to make the rest of the drawing match one small piece that's working versus trying to develop all of it in general and then making the small pieces try to correspond to the whole. Let me put in a little bit more tone here. Like I said, trying to make the whole eye socket feel rounded. And also separating the eyelid from the flesh of the upper part of the eye socket. And I want this to be in tone, but I want it to subtly be in tone. And just so you know, we're a little bit past an hour here. So once I finish this eye, we're going to wrap the stream up. So we're almost done here. Now, this has gone darker than I wanted it to. So what I'm going to do is kind of keep the tone even, but then come in here with the eraser and just sort of softly pull that out. Softly. Doesn't need to be strong, doesn't need to be harsh. And then for here, really, I don't want to draw any attention to the far eye socket. I'm just going to lay in some tone and leave that as undistinguished as possible. So now what I'm really doing is separating things that need to be separated. Like I'm separating the side of her nose from where her cheek begins with soft tone. I'm putting the break of her nose in, again, soft tone. I'm going to darken the underside of her nose a little bit more, but not a lot. Basically, I want to give it the same treatment that I gave the that inside of the eye socket above the eyelid. Just trying to make it feel like a form that is turning away. That's all. I botched that tone and I wanted to come back in, erase, and give it another try. You know, and that's something that in the digital age, you know, people say, oh, I don't know. I've gotten so used to hitting undo. I don't know if I could work traditional because I'm so used to just being able to undo. The eraser's an undo button. I mean, yeah, there's times when if you erase too much, you can kind of destroy the surface you're drawing on. But, you know, it can handle a couple of erasures. You can get a couple of passes at it. And if it takes more than that, then, you know, yeah, maybe you will need to start from scratch on a new piece of material. That's not the worst thing in the world. Now, I don't want to erase the side of the nose, but what I want to do is I want to even out this tone. And I could also do that by just running my thumb over it and smearing it. But I'm afraid that the oils of my finger will make that surface less friendly if I need to draw a little bit more back on top of it. So I'm going to avoid doing it that way. And I want to just maybe make her cheekbones just a little bit more prominent. This is one of those, it's real subtle and it'd be real easy for me to go too far. So I got to really be judicious here in how much I put in there. Just a little bit of tone to sculpt an angle. Also kind of rounding her forehead a little bit. But yeah. So that is me drawing a correction of this drawing. So this is what is 5 minutes drawn during a figure drawing class. This is an hour of live streaming, going through, making observations, making corrections, softening a lot, sharpening a few things, adjusting placement. Now, I will tell you that I do feel like there's certain aspects that I still didn't nail. Like we are looking up at the figure from the underside. But if you'll notice here, her head is tilted just a little bit more back. And I could maybe cheat that by trying to pull or slightly erase the top of her brow line and maybe trying to make this eye feel down a little bit more. But you run the risk of making all of her features start feeling like they're not in alignment. We do not want that. And I got to put that eyebrow back in. Just obliterated it. If anything, I probably need to bring this line down, bringing her skull in ever so slightly. Ever so slightly. And then maybe erasing this a little bit more so it really feels like we're looking at more of the underside of the skull. Underside of the nose. It helps. But the point is that even though this drawing is a marked improvement over both the drawing I did in class before and the one that I showed you at the start of the stream, there's still room for improvement. I'm not going to work on this anymore, only in the sense that, it's not like I'm sitting here trying to do this as a finished piece. It's a study. And I think I've gotten what I needed to get out of the study. But there's room for improvement. This probably looks better without the Cupid's bow. I think that's actually kind of distracting. And that is one of those other challenges, is sitting there and editing your piece by looking at, yes, something might be there in the drawing, but is that thing that's there adding or distracting? And I realize it's not that the Cupid's bow is distracting, it's that I didn't get it with tone. If I draw it like that, so it's not a line, and I also get the light on the other side of it. At this point, I don't even know if you guys can tell the difference in terms of watching it on a screen, on a video. But for me, I can see that it's just a subtle shift. All right, now we're getting into the weeds. I need to wrap it up. So I made some progress. I am capable of fixing bad drawings. And that's a goal that we should all aspire to. Yeah, there's going to be times when we're going to do work and it's not going to come out. And the difference between good and great is sitting down and looking at it and being able to dissect what isn't working, the specifics about volume, about lighting, about anatomy, dissecting those specifics, and then saying, all right, now that I know the specifics, let me correct them. Let me do the right version. And like you've seen in this stream, I will correct something more than once. I try one set of corrections and I'm like, ew, that's even worse. And being able to look at that and say, all right, let me take another approach. And usually it's those second and third attempts where the real understanding comes in. So on that note, everyone, thank you for watching. You know what? Definitely hit that like button. If you enjoy these videos, hit that share button. Share it with other creative journeyers that you know as well. If you think that there's people who would enjoy something like this, enjoy watching this, enjoy studying, developing their craft. And if they enjoy that, then they should definitely look at my Patreon. For as little as $2 a month, you can get access to what we call Art Book Study Group. We've got hundreds of hours of videos on there of me doing deep dives into some of the best art books around and doing studies, master studies, not with the idea of duplicating their work, but sitting down with books, George Bridgman, Andrew Loomis. We've been doing a long running series on Walt Reed's The Figure and studying them for understanding, not duplication, trying to actually understand the ideas that are in all these great art books around. A long time ago, I realized I have a huge library of art books. And how often do I actually spend looking at them? Not that often. So Art Book Study Group is an intentional, focused study time where I sit down, I live stream with you guys, and I've got a voice channel open on Discord. So we can actually talk, not just chat, but speak. You can ask me questions, and we can talk about what I'm learning, what you're learning, what you're studying. Maybe if there's things you guys have challenges with, you can post those in the Patreon Discord, and we can look at those drawings together. But the idea of all of this knowledge that I have just sitting on my bookshelves, and then I wonder why my art isn't where I want it to be. So I said, let's change that. Let's look at these things. Let's really learn and grow. So you can sign up. There are higher tiers for higher rewards, but $2 a month is the basic entry. Gets you into the Art Book Study Group, gets you access to our Patreon exclusive Discord server, gets you access to a digital archive of my comics. You can read those online digitally. So head on over to patreon.com/Jeremy. It's patreon.com/GERIMI and sign up. If you would like to get a free digital sketchbook, work in progress, animated gifts delivered right to your inbox. Why is this not switching? Okay. There we go. Newsletter.jeremy.net. That's GERIMI.net. If you'd like to get a free digital sketchbook, blog post about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me, work in progress, animated gifts delivered right to your inbox, you can sign up for my free monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you would like to purchase physical copies of my comic books for free digitally on Comixology or Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. You can pick up books like my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods. It is a standalone book, one and done, psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. Sort of like Enemy of the States meets The Dead Zone. Or you can pick up my most recent project, Morning Star. It is a retelling of Lucifer's fall from heaven as a Western. It's an 8-issue series. Volume 1 contains issues 1 through 4. Volume 2 contains the conclusion, issues 5 through 8. Both volumes have extensive back matter. There's character sketches, character designs, page thumbnails, script excerpts. I show you some of the photo references I use. I basically show you how I put together the entire comic book. And if you want to get a better look at these books, there are flip-through videos on the homepage of my YouTube channel. So if you go to youtube.com/Jeremy, just scroll down to book flip-throughs. There's a playlist on there. It's got flip-throughs for all 3 of these. You can see what's inside the books before you buy. All right, guys. I see Mila in the chat. Mila says, this was cool. Well, thank you very much, Mila. I really appreciate that. Hang on. Turn off the Amazon thing there. All right. Anyway, Mila, thank you so much for watching. You know what? Please, if you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button. Definitely helps to get the word out. So definitely subscribe, hit that like button. If there's any things you saw in this video that you're like, oh, I've got a question about this or that, comments. Comments help, and I try to read and respond to every comment, or at least give you a thumbs up to say thanks for watching. So, all right, guys, that's it for now. Go be creative.